Thank you very much. So, can you guys hear me well? Yes? No? Okay. So, thanks for the lovely introduction. Thanks for being here. I know it's a long day, so one more 45 minutes and we'll be away, but I'll try to make it nice for you guys. So just to give you guys a little bit of context, I began working with films in 2001, and I began working with stop motion animation and 2D animation right in the middle of the digital analog revolution in the film production process. So I was kind one of those guys that could touch a computer at the time without being afraid, and I became somehow a translator between the digital world and the analog guys. And I continued working, I became a VFX supervisor, I began to direct my flat films, and then in 2012 I was in the company that produced those films owned by Fernando Meirelles, who directed those films. I just learned today that Constant Garner that he directed was filmed here in this studio, which is great. And then in 2013, he invited me to direct a piece for the Museum of Tomorrow, which was going to be the biggest venue in Rio for the Olympics, to be launched in 2016. Then, during this period, I began to work with a lot of cinematic 360 videos, and I did more than 12 pieces, and I'm going to show you guys a quick video that shows a little bit of the kind of project that I was doing at that period. So, the lights off. Wow, that's it. Then after that, and maybe because of that, I was chosen in 2016 by Oculus to be part of this program called VR for Good that they created. They brought 10 filmmakers that were already working with VR into the Facebook campus. I was the first and the only person from the South Hemisphere selected, which is nice from one side and sad for the other, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it as well. And the film went really well. We did the premiere in Tribeca Film Festival. We were in a lot of great, good festivals. And then I decided that in 17, sorry, it was time to be doing VR and XR and MR and all those Rs full time. Before that, in this other company, the first one, it was like a part-time job. And I realized that I had to be together with people that were thinking in VR the whole time. So I met those guys that were creating this company called ARVORE, which is the first and probably only VC-funded VR studio in Brazil and South America. And just to give you a little bit of context, we were around 10 people, now we are more than 60, almost 70 people. And we have the studio where we create our own IPs and develop the stories there fully. We have our lab where we study a lot of the physical responses to the body, from the body to the experience, sorry. And we don't believe that VR is just about what happens inside the headset. We think that VR is way more than that, and we research a lot about it. And we have Voyager, which is a chain of LBEs, entertainment centers for VR, because in Brazil we don't have headsets. Oculus doesn't sell headsets in Brazil. HTC doesn't sell headsets in Brazil. So people doesn't have a good contact with VR there, just cardboard boxes with cell phones inside or roller coasters in the middle of a shopping mall. And if you want to create a good culture of audience for this medium, we have to show it in the proper way. Other really good thing doing that, the stores can be laboratories for the studio. So we create this content and we put in the stores. And it's really great to show it to people that are paying for the content, because they are really critical about what we do, and then we can learn a lot before launching globally our content. And then 1.5 years after creating the company, we decided it was my time to create a new project tailored for VR, creating an interactive narrative that only would make sense in VR. And then we did the line. So we were lucky to say that the project were selected by Venice, and we also won Best VR Experience, as they said there. And then we went to Kaohsiung Film Festival to do the premiere in Asia, and we won the same prize, and we are going to a lot of good festivals. So from those that never saw anything about it, I'm going to show just a 30 seconds clip, but just remembering that it's not supposed to be on a flat screen. So you are supposed to be inside this environment that I'm going to show you now.
In a world of miniatures, routine is everything. Happy are those who are on the right track. But wait. What if the right track is actually a detour? What if love is an unknown path after all?
So we began to talk about this project in November of last year, and then we decided to make some premises, how to define the scope of this project. And the first thing we wanted to do is create an experience that were for everyone, not only for gamers. And when we talk about it, we understood with the lab and with the stores Voyager that it's really important not to have any locomotion system. Because at the moment that you give someone a joystick and say you have to press this button to begin the experience, some people get really afraid of it. So we decided to avoid that by all means. And then we decided to make it, in the beginning, 5 by 5 meters, which is the maximum room scale setup for a VR interactive experience that you can have, like off the shelf. We wanted also to have a universal theme, so a thing that everybody could relate to, a love story. And also in a time that would be feasible for location-based entertainment centers and family entertainment centers, like between 12 and 15 minutes, so we can have some throughput. All these aspects trying to deal with a kind of a responsibility that I say, because we that come from the VR world, who here is from VR world already? Okay, we have a lot of people, good. Usually when we go to festivals, I think we are too generous with the content, which is good because we are among ourselves when we are with the creators. But when we are talking to the real public, the mainstream public, they are not as generous as we are when they watch a content. And mainly when they are paying. That's what I was talking about Voyager, right? So I think we have to create stories that are really easy to interact if they are interactive, organic, so people don't give up and think, okay, this medium is not for me, and that's one of the big responsibility that we have. We have to create things that are beautiful, because people compare with what they are used to seeing in other mediums. And we have to make beautiful stories and stories that people can understand. No matter if the concept is really nice and interesting, if we're doing experimental things for ourselves, that's great, and we have to continue doing that. But when we launch that for the big audience, we have to do things that people understand. So that was our main premises. And then to make it like tailored for VR, we were thinking about interactions. So making a story that were moved by the interactions between the user and the environment that we're inviting them to go. And not talking as a game, but talking about really meaningful interactions. And who is already doing this job really well are the indie game developers. So if you guys don't like games, I think you should pay more attention, not because of the gaming side of it, but because of the interactive and narrative aspect that we're working really well together in some of these games. And if you guys know this game called Florence, oh, okay. So if I was you, I would stop listening to my talk now, and I would download this game in your smartphone and just play with a headphone and alone, because probably you are going to cry. But it's a really, really nice game because it has really simple interactions that can look really simple in the beginning. So these people can do, yeah. And this looks really, really silly, but as the experience goes forward and forward, they teach you to interact with that. And in the middle of the experience, sometimes you have to do things because of the story that you don't believe that you have to do. And you begin to stay really sad and almost crying because you have to act to make the story go forward. It's you. The story becomes your story, and you have to do something to make things go forward. And this is really powerful. So that this was the kind of concept we wanted for the interactions for our story. And the setting, we wanted to use São Paulo. Why? First of all, because I was born there. But more than that, because we think this is a medium, and this is a revolution that is happening, that for the first times is going all over the globe at the same time. So in Brazil, we never had the chance to be part of a revolution like that when it relates to communication and medium and arts, and maybe help to shape a little bit the standards and the language in a more colorful way, in a more diverse way. So we want to use São Paulo, and Brazil, not using like the florist, the jungle, the samba, the football players, but using São Paulo, a regular city, the same way we see Paris or New York or Los Angeles or London in films now. And maybe if we do that from the beginning in the fictions, we can make people be more used to different places from the world in the content in VR in the next years. And also because I have this personal attachment, and my father was born in São Paulo. My grandfather was born in São Paulo. So I had a lot of images of this place, which is really interesting because it was in the 40s. Some of the big influence from Europe were already there, and the country was developing really fast at the time. But we also had some characters and some singularities that would only happen in a third world country like Brazil. And if you look at the scale model that we built of the city, you will find some of these really interesting characters. It would give a special flavor for the experience. And also, we wanted to have a story that was really simple and easy to understand for everyone, but not simplistic. So how to create a story for 15 minutes that will stay in a 5 by 5 meter environment and make it good, make it more complex as a storyteller. Then, after thinking a lot of it, we decided, and it became almost like a natural solution to create the story in a scale model. Because then we could have like an entire city there, and we could follow the characters, just given a few steps. We could have this feeling that we were going through an entire day, and then we could have different places and different environments, not having any kind of unnatural locomotion system besides just walking as you do in the physical world, right? And also, it would help increase the fable mood that we had in our first premises, Like scale models are magical by itself, just stop it. If they can move in VR, wow, this can be even more magical, and we wanted to explore that. So in December of that same year, last year, we decided to make a proof of concept. So anyone of you guys know Quill? Okay, so this is a tool created by Oculus to draw in VR, which is already really nice. And then we did really fast, like in 2 weeks, this proof of concept of the simple story of the guy. His name was Johnny, and he was going outside of the factory, and he wanted to grab a flower to give to Mary that lived in the other side of the street, of the city, sorry. And he wanted to help him, so we have to bring the flower because it was too high for him, and then he could move through the city. And one thing that we are trying to prove and understand that if we can have really simple interactions and a little bit of spatial storytelling. So we had to move to follow him to the scale model and to see what's doing. So we had these obstacles that makes you move through the space to find him and see how people reacted to that. And then we had this beginning of this test of how to make interactions that could look beautiful as well. So we have this amount of birds, those, and then you have to do like that so they can fly it, and then after that, Johnny can go to find Mary, and of course, in the end of the last day, he could not find her because she was already gone. Then, after these 2 weeks first prototype, proof of concept, we said, okay, it works well, so let's do this project. So now, what are our main goals? And now, this part, I like to say that it's a small metaphor that for doing VR content, when it's interactive, you need a lot of different kinds of people, a multidisciplinary team. And I'm going to talk about this team now in a few slides. But it's really hard to get everybody on board and put everybody to brainstorm and make everybody decide together where to go. So I say that to make a VR project like that is like climbing a really, really tall mountain, sorry. But to find this mountain, you are in the dark, and it's really hard to find it in the dark. So you have to find 1 or 2 people, usually people that are more used to narratives, if you're doing narrative content, to find this mountain in the dark. And then having the mountain there, sorry again, then you can bring all the team together and say, now let's climb it together. So we had to decide these premises for everyone to understand which kind of experience we were doing. The first one was to make a story that used the body of the user to advance. And I'm going to talk to you about it soon. But we wanted to make people move to make the story go forward. And doing that through really meaningful interactions, to create interactions that were meaningful and that would be seamless with the story that we were talking to people. Not making people stop and play with something and then think again in the story. We want to have a fable, and then we decided, because of the scale model, that would be in the first layer a love story, but in the second layer it would be a story about routine and the fear of change. That then this could be more or less like what happens with the films from Pixar, when you have people that understand just in the first layer, but have a deeper meaning that can make everyone get really moved and talk about it when they go out of the experience. And we want to have a fantastic environment. So if we're doing a magical scale model, we can explore that a lot. So after 1 year and a half testing different frameworks at ARVORE, we decided that this is our framework for the kind of experience, interactive and narrative that we do. Always user-oriented, iterative and incremental, which means that we don't have pre-production and we don't have post-production. And I'm going to explain you guys now what that means. We have 3 areas in the company: narrative, audiovisual, and systems. And we have professionals from each one of these areas on each project. Each project changed a little bit, so to give you an example, in the line, we have 2 narrative designers. I was one of them. And we had another girl that came from the script writing field, but she also researched a lot about installations and other kind of areas. We have production designers. We have 3 CGI artists, one of them more on the 2D side, 2 more, the other 2 more on the 3D field, from the 3D field. And we had the systems with 1 programmer and 1 game designer that was working more as an interactive designer. And the funniest thing about this is that you bring to the table people with really, really different backgrounds. So I came from the films. For one of my examples, most of my examples came from the narrative and the audiovisual side. One of them, for example, was Buster Keaton. We knew we would have like a wooden toy that would be the main character, and we would not have time to create facial expression. So I said, who is the master of showing people all the feelings all the time, not moving a muscle of the face? Buster Keaton. So we began to study a lot silent movies to understand how he moves his body in a way to show people their feelings and what he was feeling. But in the other side, we had the game designer that came with Florence, the game that I showed you. I also didn't know that, and it was our biggest reference for beginning to understand how we could use the interactions. And all these completely different things that you probably would never think when you were creating a film could be good reference, and of course, making like a soup of all this, if we're lucky, would have a good experience. That was the line. Then we did in February, this really simple tech demo. That the idea was to bring all the team together and understand in a short period what is our firepower, what we can do together. So we did a really simple scale model with the most beautiful graphic that we could do in that short amount of time, and one interaction. So we had everything that we needed to test technically together. And then doing that, we said, okay, now we know we have the bar of our quality set. And then we decided to study contemporary dance. Because if we were talking about moving the body, and this would be our first premise of this experience, we were talking a lot, and we said we had to learn how to understand the grammar of the body, how we move, and how moving our body makes us feel different kinds of emotions. So we began to study, and by said study, I am a kind of a nerd, so I thought I was going to read a lot, but then when we talked to the specialists, the contemporary dancers, no, we're not going to read anything, you're going to move. And when we begin to do a lot of workshops like that with the whole team to understand how we could feel different emotions moving and how we can use that as narrative tools during the experience. And this was one of the most beautiful insights about VR that I had after all these years, because being a film director for 15 years, I never stopped to talk, to think about my body when I was doing a film, and I never stopped to think in the body of the user that was going to watch my film. We take that for granted, that doesn't matter. In VR, the experience begins with that. Is it going to be seated or stand up? I'm going to watch all the content just in front of me, or going to see 360. Is it interaction? I'm going to move or not? Will I have to use different levels? This is one of the things that we learned, that like contemporary dance classify the movement in 3 different levels. And we learned that we can make the same movement feels completely different if you just change the level of the person in that moment. So from the ones that are going to try this experience, one of the low point of the experience in the narrative arc, we actually make people go down, and they have to like bend or stay on their knees or even sit on the floor. And subconsciously, it makes them understand better in what moment of the experience they are. And it brings different kinds of emotions rather than just watching a film, stop it. And then we did our first official prototype with cardboard boxes, Post-its, and tapes. And then we say that it's like role-playing. So one of the artists was the user, and he only could do what the narrative designer read to him, so we could see if what we wrote made sense. And then the other artists would play as the characters. And on the floor, we have the geography of the scale model with the Post-its, with the tape. And it's great because you can test it really quick, and you can change things really quickly. So one of the best insights we had in this moment was, in the beginning, the idea was that the scale models was going to be an island, and people would go around it. And then doing that, we understand the physical space and the body of the user. We could notice that everything would have to be really small, and we wouldn't have any perspective. Everything would look ugly. And then one of the guys said, what if we make the model as a new? And I said, oh, this is good because then we don't have more, we can use the limitations of the space in our favor, and then the perspective can go forever, and the scale model can be way more sophisticated, like visually speaking. But then, if we had that, things that it's always changing when you go to new phases and iterations of the process, there are some things that are the same the whole process, at least for us. And one is the emotional curve. So when we decided to make this kind of story that we are doing, we did this emotional curve. That's quite simple. And then the emotional curve is exactly the same to the whole process. What changed a lot is how we were going to achieve that by creating a story, making a prototype, testing with users, and no, we are not achieving that. What we have to do now to change it, right? And we also had things that didn't work really well. So in the beginning, we want to give the user a character. So he would be Adam or Emma, a 9-year-old kid that was in his birthday or her birthday. And it was a present, this was a gift from his late grandfather that for this anniversary gave this letter with a key inside, and then you could go inside this magical room to then go into the story inside the scale model. And even to telling you now, it's taken a long, so if you think about 15 minutes, having these two arcs, the character, like the main character, the user arc, and the little character's arc, we realized testing it a lot that we were not going to be able to tell two good stories in this period. And then we decided to drop this part after 2 months, which was kind of painful. And then we began to do what we call the gray box stage. So here, you can make my voice on this video the video go in a lower volume, please. So we did here, like in also 2 weeks as well, a gray box of the whole experience. And then even the interactions we had there, only using yellow buttons. And in the beginning, we were testing just ourselves inside the company, so that when the button was up, we could press it, just moving our hands, and then we could see all the model, and all the screenplay was already like there. I was doing the voiceover, and we could see really simple things of all the geography that we were planning to make, and we could test with different people. This may look really silly sometimes, but we were testing the narrative aspects and the systems together, and they were working already well. But what we couldn't see at the moment was the visual, and this is a challenge because it's impossible to test everything together, but if you test it separately, when you do like in films, when you do a lot of concept boards, this can work, but sometimes it just works on the flat screen. And then you are in the middle of a hard decision to make because you have things that are beautiful, but you don't know if they're going to work, and then you have some gray box that shows some things, and also there is one really big problem that is scale, because it's physical, you know, it's real, the size of the thing. So we tested a lot of the size of the characters in the gray box, and they worked really well, but then we had the final version that has way more visual stimuli. We understood that the scale that we had didn't work, and we couldn't see the character, and then we had to make it bigger, but then it was in a different scale from the model. So it's still hard to understand all the process to make everything work together. And one of the best things that I can say that we discovered, and it's not a discovery, but helped a lot, is making, after a while, a gray box of the whole experience. But wow, it's not that bad. But having a vertical slice in the middle of the experience that shows exactly how things are going to be. So you can test the narrative and the interactions, the systems in the whole experience, but you can test the visuals in one part of it. And it also can be really helpful if you think in the roadmap of the project, because we even submitted for Venice this version that you guys are seeing, which is really crazy. And I was completely afraid that they would never understand what we were proposing. But luckily, they did, because the story was clear, and we said on the form, the middle part and the downtown will be in the final quality for the whole maquette in the final of the production. And they were nice enough to believe in us, and it worked well. Then we have the interactions, and our idea was to make all the interaction as easiest as possible for everyone. So from 3 to 3 weeks, we stopped the production in the moment that it was, and we brought to the company from 10 to 15 people that never tried VR before. Oh, sorry. I was supposed to play all the videos at the same time, but PowerPoint, you know. And then we could test if people were being able to do the interactions in a natural way or not. And if not, we could change a little bit the script to make the narrator explains people what's going on. But if you had to do that all the time in all interactions, we will lose the emotional attachment with the story. So we had to balance it really well. And we did that just by testing a lot of people. So that was going to talk about the changing the scripts. So also distance. I thought that I said you guys that in the beginning we were thinking about 5 by 5 meters. Then we thought about 4 by 4 meters. And in the end, we made an experience that was 2.5 meters to 2.5 meters. And the feeling that we had doing that, you know, when you do a first cut of a feature film that has like 2 hours and 20 minutes, and you think that everything is there and you cannot change, but then you cut, and then the same film is working in 1 hour and 30 minutes. I said, how could I think that it worked in 2 hours? It was exactly the same thing, and I like to say that editing in VR is editing the space. And this is really interesting, and you can think a lot about how you can make smaller stories so you can show in more places, and that's why we decided to make it smaller and smaller as much as we could because of Voyager. And usually you can understand that you can make the story in a smaller space that you can think of. I was going to tell about that, but I think I can leave for the QA. The last thing that I want to show you guys, so we can have time for questions, is the talent and how it was important for us to have good talent to promote the film and also to increase the value of the. So now, please, the volume.
It's the first time I had an immersive experience like that. You know, in a movie, you're from the outside. Here, it's almost like I was with them. I was part of it. I had to narrate what was going on, but also I got involved with it. So I think that's the biggest difference, instead of just being somebody who's watching something. Not so long ago, we kept memories in photo albums, remember? It's an experience where there's no barriers. You're just in it, and it makes you feel that you were part of it. There's a moment towards the end of the film where something happened that when I was watching it, it did something to my body, and I felt the emotion, but it wasn't only the emotion. It was the emotion combined with a body response. I'm just intrigued. I guess I'm just intrigued. I just want to learn more about it because it did something to me that wasn't expected.
Wow, next time it will be your turn, okay?
I'm really happy to be a part of this project because I really love what it talks about. Like there's this one line that says, happy are those who are on the right track. That's kind of like, you know, even the title of the film says it all. What is the right track? Where is the right track? And this is constantly questioned throughout the experience. So in a way, what ARVORE is doing here is bringing, you know, something from Brazil, generated in Brazil, narrated by a Brazilian, created by a Brazilian, but the story is universal. It's a love story. So I think that's beautiful.
So probably you may know this guy from Westworld. He's one of the bad cowboys in the series, and he's also Brazilian, and he's trying to do the same for our country, like showing Brazilian in a good way abroad. So it was a perfect match, and I think increased a lot for the project. So I think now we can finish and maybe having some questions.
Ricardo, I mean,
5 minutes, but
I just can say wow by seeing that. Please have a seat. We have about only a short 5 minutes.
Sorry. Had a
d-
lot of
no,
things to
don't
say.
don't worry about it because
That's
I
all
mean,
right.
just I think we all of us had to really see in detail how you did it because. I mean, it's already fairly complicated to create something that is a good emotional storytelling on a two-dimensional screen
Yes.
for cinema or a television set. But once you liberate the content from this two-dimensional screen and put it right into the middle of us, and as you said yesterday, putting the human in the center again, and the human being free to move around, it's amazing what additional work that means, and that was a great way, of course, to show how you did that. The question that immediately arises is where can we get that?
So it's still one of the big problems of VR, right? Showing it. So by now we are going to festivals. So we were at VR Days in Amsterdam, and each city that we go, we try to talk to people that has potentially a venue or a place we can put a permanent exhibition. So now, because we were in VR Days, we're talking to them to maybe have it in Amsterdam in a place for 1, 2, 3 months. And the same here. So we're trying to talk to people, if you guys know someone that would be interested, to have it in an LBE or even in a museum or a cultural center that we could like the setup is not really complicated. And besides that, I think Q2 of next year, we'll have a home version for people probably with Quest. But then we have to change a little bit the concept and make it like in a smaller place because people won't have like 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters to have it at home probably. But then, so that's it. By now, like museums, cultural centers, and LBE or / arcades or cinema VRs, and then home use middle of next year.
Okay. Are those temporary installations, or so how long? When maybe somebody has a great venue in Berlin or surroundings, so how long are you planning to put these installations there?
Depending on the interest, like
So that's rather flexible from
we
your
were
side
in
as well.
Kaohsiung for three weeks. Now it's going to be 2 months, and depending on how people react, we can prolong it. Or
All
not.
right,
But
I
you
see
could
some
also
people in
have-
the audience who could think of
Yeah.
good locations in Berlin, Berlin partner and so on. So we'll keep our ears open.
But you would have also multiple systems, right? It could be in Berlin and simultaneously in Beijing or something.
Yeah.
No, of course, can be
Okay.
everywhere at the same time. Yeah.
Good. Questions from the audience? Is there any? Otherwise, I mean, I talked.
What time is the coffee? That's the question.
Now, well,
Actually,
now it's
in 1
actually-
minute already, but
not-
no, don't worry about
It's,
it.
it's not about coffee. I think it's
Sorry.
about beer or something. You're
Okay.
quite-
Yeah,
not
it's
quite
about the beer
sure.
Sorry,
part,
I'm from
No,
Brazil. Yeah.
but for you it's later. No, as I dropped the name Mel Slater, who's a scientist in
Yes.
Barcelona, who's working on full body experiences and out of body experiences.
In VR.
How was your work influenced by his scientific?
Totally influenced by him. We had to read a lot of papers if we are doing VR because there are no reference, right? So we have to go to the academics, and he's like researching how VR makes people feel like physically.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that we because I love 360 video in films in VR, and I did a lot, and I think they can be really powerful. But I think they are like a gradual change from one medium to another. If you want to be more disruptive, I think you have to go to interactive storytelling and making people move, because that is something that people will never do watching a film.
Yep.
You know, so and that we wanted to explore more, and his work, and Jaron Lanier, which is the other, I would say he's my Yoda for VR, are the guys that I use more, read more, and try to research more to get the good reference of how can I create our pieces.
As the actor said in your video, that it did something to his body when he was in the VR experience, and the moment was like, I want to be in this VR experience.
You don't say that when you do watch a film usually, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think this has been a really great way to end the day on this stage, because you have, on the industry stage, you have shown something that very often in beyond entertainment cases is not taking place enough yet. You have shown all of us here how you're not only liberating content from the screen, but how you're adding the very important aspects of storytelling and putting the human in the center again, and making all of it the way it has to feel like. Yeah? So I think all of the beyond entertainment cases can take a lot of that entertainment aspect into their cases as well. And of course, it's a very new way, and it opens worlds of new horizons for entertainment itself. So thank you for coming, and please give a big hand to Ricardo Laganaro.
Thank you very much.